Welcome on in to the Utah Blockheads. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. Utah fans, buckle up. This is going to be a wild ride this month. The College Football Playoff Committee debuted their 2025 College Football Playoff ranking on Tuesday, November 4th. And I think, to the surprise of everybody, is Utah's ranking. But I think it's a very encouraging sign for Utah and the Big 12. But certainly understanding of the committee and their history, proceed with caution. So I think that's going to be the message of today's episode. But look, on this one, we're going to be talking about the Big 12 having three teams in the top 13 of the college playoff ranking is significant, and I think it's a sign of respect. We'll talk about that. Also, talking about Utah's chances at an at-large berth. Obviously, Utah has to take care of business in these next three games in order for that to even be a conversation. But I think given the matchup for Utah in those three games, you like Utah's chances to do that, but they are going to need some help. So we're going to talk about what Utah might need in order to secure an at-large berth. Because, again, we're talking about the Big 12, and the Big 12 has historically been a one bid lead in years past. And I think what this shows us is the committee giving respect to what the Big 12 has done, has accomplished this season. So let's dive into the conversation today with the college football playoff. First, I think it's important again to point out three teams in the top 13. That's significant and a sign of respect. I think the playoff committee is saying, "All right, Big 12, we see you." And I think it's important to keep in mind what Brett Yormark has always said whenever he's been asked to talk about the college football playoff, whether it be format, seeding, whatever. His message has always been, let us prove it on the field. And I think what the committee is saying by putting Utah, Texas Tech, and BYU in the top 13 is, all right, bet. I think that's exactly what the committee is saying. Obviously, giving a sign, showing respect to what the Big 12 has done, but I think it's going to be up to the Big 12 and these three teams specifically to take care of business the rest of the way. Now, with the committee, their big talking point last night, or at least the ESPN show, talked a lot about strength of schedule and strength of record, and those being really important elements in the conversation this year for the college football playoff. And I think coming into the season, we knew that was going to be the case, and I think a lot of us assumed that it was going to lead to heavy SEC bias, because that's been the message from the SEC from the jump, is we play a harder schedule than anybody else in the conference. Our conference is the best. And to be fair, yeah, it's pretty good. But I think the Big 12 has done a lot this year with Texas Tech, BYU taking care of business, and Utah taking care of business against their schedule as well to earn these rankings. And when you look at BYU and Texas Tech's resume, their best win is Utah, right? And with Utah dominating in the manner that they have against the rest of their schedule, those two teams are being lifted up by Utah's metrics and how they're performing there. And credit, obviously, to BYU and Texas Tech for getting the win against Utah and earning them, and in doing so in pretty, Texas Tech specifically getting the big win, the comfortable margin. Even though that was a 13-10 game with 8 minutes left, I think the committee is showing a lot of respect for Utah with their only two losses coming against top 10 teams, obviously based on this ranking. and understanding of the context around Utah in those games as well, with Devin Dampier going into the Tech game with an injury, and Dampier suffering an injury late in that game against BYU. And so, with the committee making it a major point of emphasis, the two elements: strength of schedule, which is simply the number of quality teams on your schedule, as well as strength of record, which is the quality of your wins against your schedule. Right? I think the committee has done the Big 12 a great favor in providing them a path to multiple bids in the college football playoff this year. Again, the Big 12 has been a one bid league for quite some time, even going back to when Oklahoma and Texas were in the league. This has been a one bid league, and I think what we saw Tuesday night was maybe a shift in that and how the Big 12 is viewed this season, thanks to the way that BYU, Texas Tech, and Utah have performed. At the same time, the ACC conference, falling behind the Big 12 is pretty significant for the conference and for these three teams in the Big 12 and their chances at an at-large bid. So with the ACC falling off a little bit, you have to like the way that this has set up for Utah. I think the committee has given the Big 12 a path. It's a tiny path, but it is a path to multiple bids this season. And obviously the Big 12 is going to need a lot of chaos the rest of the way. And I'm going to talk about some of the chaos that will need, the Big 12 will need, and Utah specifically will need to secure an at-large bid. But the fact that there is even a pathway, an opportunity, a chance is significant. It's significant. So let's dive into this. Utah sitting at 7-2, 3-2 in Big 12, 4-2, right? 4-2, 7-2, 9 games, 4-2, 6 games. Yes, 7-2, 4-2. Do your homework, kids. But Utah sitting at 7-2 at this point of the season, with a big win over UCLA, big wins over Arizona State, Cincinnati last week on ESPN College Game Day. I shouldn't say on ESPN College Game Day, but ESPN College Game Day in attendance for the weekend. The national stage set for Utah, and them performing in the manner they did, getting a top 25 victory and upset, sort of validating what they've done in all the other games prior to, I think was significant for Utah. Now, again, I think it's been mentioned a number of times throughout the night, throughout the week, that the metrics love Utah. I think Stuart Mandel said it that way, tweeted that out specifically, that the metrics all love Utah. And again, it's a credit to the way that Utah has performed offensively, defensively. They've dominated against their schedule outside of those 2 losses this season. So again, with Utah, you're talking about a team that has the second largest average margin of victory at 36.4 points, only behind Texas Tech, who's I think at 38 points, which is just, it's huge. And so it's been big for Utah to have that sort of margin of victory. And then, with the way that the offense performed, putting up, averaging 38, 39 points, the defense being one of the stingiest defenses in the country, limiting opponents to about 13, 14 points per game, all of that bodes well for Utah and is a boost to their resume, right? I think all of these things taking into account, the thing that they don't have currently is a number of good wins on the resume. They have some good losses. They have a top 25 win against Cincinnati. But as we're talking about it, right, you look at the rest of the schedule, and Utah has to take care of business in these final 3 games. But with Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas, there's not a great opportunity to add a top 25 win to the resume. I think your best chance is Baylor, maybe backdooring their way into a top 25 ranking, but I don't know, that's not great, especially if they drop as we expect them to going into the Baylor game. Um, that's going to be tough for them to find the sort of wins they need to crack the top 25. Maybe Kansas can do it. Kansas has, a couple opportunities this month to earn some wins, but I think that's even kind of asking a lot of Kansas, asking a lot of the rankings in the committee. I don't think that it's going to be a thing. Maybe Cincinnati, maybe Arizona State can backdoor their way into the top 25 playoff ranking. That would be significant for Utah. That's probably your best shot, to be honest. But in terms of adding another win over these final 3 games, it's not looking great. So Utah's going to have to not only win, but win convincingly, and do so in the same way that they've done in these previous games against Cincinnati, against Colorado, against Arizona State. That's the sort of performance Utah is going to need to finish out the rest of the way in order to set themselves up for an at-large bid. So, yeah, Utah has to take care of business the rest of the way. You've got to go 3-0 against Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas. And 2 of those games being on the road, one of which a Black Friday game against Kansas Friday morning. Those are going to be tricky games. But I think Utah has done enough to this point where you can feel pretty confident against with Utah against these 3 teams and how they match up, how the Utes match up against those 3 teams. So at minimum, Utah has to go 3-0 in November to have a chance. If they drop one of these games, it's over. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. Utah has to go 3-0. So it has to start there. Now, once you start getting into some of the chaos needed around Utah, that's where it gets kind of fun. So obviously, I think you can look at the 4 teams in front of Utah: Oklahoma, Texas, Notre Dame, and Oregon. Those teams are ranked 12, 11, 10, and 9. And when you look at what Utah would need to secure an at-large bid, you probably need to land in that number 10 spot. Even at number 11, where you're top 12, it's still not guaranteed. So you probably need to be in that 10 spot at the very least, right? So you're going to need some help. And what Utah is going to need when you look at the 4 teams in front of them, I think it's doable. I think it's actually pretty doable. When you look at the schedules for Oklahoma and Texas and Notre Dame, pretty easy. Oregon, pretty easy as well. But Oklahoma and Texas in particular. So they've got 3 games to finish up the year. Oklahoma is going on the road to Alabama, November 15th. That's a 1:30 kick. That's going to be a tough one for the Sooners to secure. Then they return home for a November 22nd showdown with Missouri. That one's kind of tricky, right? Because if Oklahoma drops that one, if Oklahoma drops against Alabama and they fall somewhere top 20, top 15, Missouri getting that win would bolster their resume as well. So that's kind of a tricky one. But I think the key game to all of this is going to be the November 29th showdown at Oklahoma against LSU. If LSU can play spoiler in that final week of the season, that could create a lot of chaos that could benefit Utah. So those are the final 3 games for Oklahoma. Again, Alabama, Missouri, LSU. You could definitely find your way to 2 losses there, potentially 3 losses, depending on that. They could also go 3-0. Who knows? But I think you could see that happening there. Let's talk about Texas. So Texas, they have 3 games coming up as well. They're going to go on the road to Georgia. Now that's going to be a big one. Georgia number 5 in the AP poll. Sorry, I don't have the playoff ranking here. Yeah, Georgia number 5 in the playoff ranking as well. I'm looking at Google. Shout out to stupid Google. But you look at what Texas has on their remaining schedule. So number 5, Georgia. They have Arkansas at home, and then Texas A&M at home November 28th. So, again, you could very easily see 2 more losses for Texas. That Arkansas game squished in between Georgia and Texas A&M, that could be a little bit of a trap game for Texas. So, again, Utah absolutely needs some chaos, but it's not unfathomable with these 2 teams specifically that there could be enough chaos for Utah to move up. For good measure, let's talk about Notre Dame and Oregon schedules just to kind of run through it, right? So Notre Dame, they dropped their first 2 games this season, falling into an 0-2 hole. Both losses came against ranked opponents, and they've taken care of business so far this season, the rest of the way. But you look at their final slate of games, they've got 4 contests to finish out November. They host Navy, which could be a tricky one. They go on the road to Pitt, which, again, you never know. Pat Narduzzi, wild card, you never know. Syracuse. Syracuse is an interesting one because there's always seemed to be, Fran Brown has done a great job of getting these signature wins, and there may not be a more impactful, better signature win than Notre Dame ranked highly. So that could be one. And then they finish up on the road against Stanford. So I think that one, obviously Notre Dame is going to be favored and probably heavily favored in all 4 of those games. But it's not out of the question. And if Notre Dame drops one against any of those 4 teams, I think that's a pretty tough blow for the Fighting Irish. So that's what you have there. And then with Oregon, I don't see Oregon falling too far if they drop one because they've got a schedule that really sets up well for them. So they're going to be on the road at Iowa. Now, if Iowa beats them again, and with it being at Iowa, I think that helps Oregon, if they drop it. But they're on the road at Iowa this weekend. They return home for a matchup against Minnesota. Then they welcome number 20 ranked USC. And then they go on the road to Washington to finish up November 29th. So there could be 2 losses there. And this matchup against Iowa is really interesting. A lot of people are actually calling for the Iowa upset. So if that happens, that changes quite a bit. And I think, again, Utah is going to need chaos because they just don't have the opportunity to add quality win in the same way that these 4 teams that I've just talked about, Oklahoma, Texas, Notre Dame, Oregon, that they do. They've got matchups against top 25 teams on their schedule, well, except for Notre Dame. But this is what Utah is going to need. They're going to need some chaos over this final month to move up. I think Utah can do a lot to not only get those 3 wins, but do so pretty emphatically, continue to dominate in the way that they have this past month. And with them coming off of the bye week, healing up, re-energizing, I think that will help them to finish strong, and they're going to need to, but they're going to need some chaos in front of them to kind of help their cause. But again, there's a path. There's a path for the Big 12 to secure multiple bids. Do I think it's very likely? I don't think it's very likely, but I think this is position the Big 12 to at least have 2 bids. And I think that's pretty big for the Big 12, which has struggled to earn that respect. And with the way that the ACC has been viewed so far, up to this point, you like the way that the Big 12 has sort of emerged. And I think it's important that the Big 12 has these top 3 teams in Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, kind of emerging as the top tier in the conference. With the way that Utah has performed specifically, I think that's really helped out this trio of teams in the Big 12. So again, just to sort of finish up, Utah got big respect from the playoff committee. The Big 12 got a lot of respect. And I think that's a big thing for the Big 12. for those teams, those three teams, Utah getting the respect that they did to land at number 13 with Texas Tech, BYU ranked 8 and 7, inside the top 10, I think helps their cause as well. And then again, just the Big 12, Brett Yormark asking for a chance, an opportunity to prove it on the field. The Big 12 has more or less done that up to this point, but now it's time to put the money where the mouth is and finish the season strong. To put it lightly, they've got to finish and take care of business. These three teams specifically have to take care of business the rest of the way, right? The committee has given the Big 12 a pathway to multiple bids this year, and it's up to the Big 12 to now capitalize on that opportunity. And these three teams have to finish strong the rest of the way, while hoping, rain dancing, praying for all types of chaos around them. I think that'll go a long way for Utah. So wanted to get this up. I've with the bye week, I've been enjoying some time off. We've been doing a lot of home stuff here, home renovation here at the Bartle household. So hoping to have that done and getting back to daily content here. So, but needed to get this up. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, and I'll be back at it probably Friday, I think, is when I'll get another episode up. But appreciate everybody, and